Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tank review. Tier 8 Italian TD, the next tank I unlocked and played. Well, what have we here? The natural, what's the word I'm looking for, comparison is going to be against the Vipera, which is a premium. And unfortunately, I'll just say it right out front, we have a situation once again where the Tech Tree tank is clearly inferior to the premium. But that being said, if you are grinding through this line looking to get to the Minotauro, let's talk about the Tier 8 SMV CC-67. According to the information here on the vehicle details, this was a project tank, discontinued at the development stage. So pretty close to a fantasy tank. They must have had some drawings. I don't know. They never released the stuff that they have to kind of see how far along in development this got. I mean, development could mean it was drawn on a napkin by 2 engineers, or there could be fairly detailed plans that they just never went through with. But in any event, we're really getting into fantasy land at this point with the Italian TDs. It is another of the assault, I'm going to say ish, TDs in the line. In theory, it has a lot of armor. It has a half turret, which goes 35 degrees each side. Semi-low slung, pretty flat sides right there. And that's all I can say about that. The crew I was using had 4 skills, working on their 5th, pretty good crew. My equipment setup was vents. I was running a turbo and an IA. I felt like the IA is mandatory on this tank to tame the dispersion, which is pretty bad. We'll talk about the guns and the possibilities in just a minute. And of course the turbo to get this thing moving around. It is not quite as slow as the Vipera, which is a nice thing. But I did like the turbo for chasing damage or getting into position, and then I had the vents. I was running 15 standard, 21 heat, and 9 HE. Really quickly on the pen, you're getting 226 on the AP. You're getting 300 on the heat, which is considerably better than the Tier 7's premium round, so that you can actually have some kind of chance against some of those more heavily armored. Although 300 is kind of the cut point for some of the very heavily armored stuff. Still, it is effective. Remember, it is a Tier 8. It is a Tier 8, so if you're fighting 10s, you're kind of bumming anyway. And I was running large kits and a fire extinguisher. No food, no directives were run on this thing. Let's take a look at a comparison amongst some of its peers. What I chose then for us to look at is obviously the Vipera, which is the premium. Then we have an AC-48, which is the other auto-loading TD, Tech Tree TD at Tier 8, and the TS-5, because the TS-5 is another one of those assault kind of TDs. So a little bit of a selection here of similar to ish, similar kind of things or something. I don't know what I'm saying. They all have 400 average damage. The penetration on the standard round is 226. That's actually pretty decent. That is actually pretty decent. Remember, it's 300 on the heat round. Again, we'll talk about the other guns in just a minute. Rate of fire is relatively similar, although remember the TS-5 is going to be a cyclical gun, and the Vipera, well, the other 3 are autoloaders. Although the Vipera and the SMV kind of play cyclical. We'll talk about that a little bit later. For the reload, 23 seconds for the CC-67, 34 seconds for the Vipera, but remember you're getting 2 more shells out of that 10 seconds. Think about that. Gun traverse is low. We've got 35 degrees each side. The Vipera has 45. Because why not? Why would the premium not have 10 degrees more field of regard on each side? Good question. It does. The gun depression is -10, elevation 20, just like the Vipera. Much better than these other 2 tanks. This does give both of these tanks over here, and I'll get to a Vipera. Actually, I think I did preview it. Did I already review it? I think I did. It gives both of these guys pretty good the gun depression and the use of much of the terrain in the game, which is kind of designed around -10 gun depression if you're talking about ridge fighting. That's just the way it is. Aim time is 2.3, which is pretty good. Not quite TS-5 levels, but considerably better than the Vipera, so that is nice. But look at that horrible dispersion. In fact, all these tanks are relatively bad except for the AC-48. Brings the average DPM to in line with the AC-46, but bizarrely 100, almost 200 less than the Vipera. Here's a kind of interesting thing to think about. If you look at the reload of the AC-48, which is 32 seconds, and you look at the reload of the SMV-67, which is 23 seconds, there's a 10-second roughly difference between those two. They both have a 400 alpha, but it ends up having a similar DPM, which at first didn't make a lot of sense to me until I remembered that, and I haven't mentioned it yet, the intra clip or between shot time on your autoloader is 7 seconds on the 67, 6 on the Vipera, because why not? Why would you not let them shoot 2 more shells faster? Which gives them basically the same DPM. Very interesting. So at first blush you'd go, well, how is it that the AC-46 or AC-48 takes 10 more seconds to reload, has the same alpha gun, but has the same DPM? Well, it's because there's a bunch of time built in trying to take those shots. I mean, the absolute minimum it would take would be 14 seconds. Fire, wait 7, right? And that's if I'm firing right at the shot. That kind of is added onto the reload, if you think about it, per a DPM calculation. So just a kind of interesting tidbit on the side there. Hit points are decent for both of these. It has 1300, not quite as tough as the TS5. And then the armor. The armor is supposed to be one of this tank's things. We're going to look at what that actually turns out to be in practice here in just a minute. But the Vipera just plain old has better armor. 275 in the turret, which is another 15. That really pushes it into the range of challenging a lot of tier 10s, even some of them when they're pressing 2 on occasion. This one's at 260, which is good, but not amazing. Then we've got 60 on the side, 160 on the side of the Vipera, because why not? I love this. I absolutely love it. We get down here to the top speed. We got 35. That is one nice thing it does have over the Vipera. It is faster, and it's not nearly as fast as the AC-48, of course. And of course, the TS5 is just a sluggard. This is why I ran a turbo on both the SMV and the Vipera. If we come down here to the camo percentage, it's pretty decent, fairly low slung. These are all within a couple of points of each other. Not much to report there, and then the view range is at 360. So what do we have? We have a kind of assault TD, that's its role, that really is lacking on the armor. We're going to jump back into the garage. Let me take a look at that and show that to you why I think it's not great, especially if you compare it to the Vipera. It's pretty sad, so let's go check that out. So herein lies the problem with this supposedly being an assault TD. This is the SMV CC-67. And as you can see, the turret's pretty decent. 281 effective. It is fairly angled right there, not amazingly. There is some mantlet issues though, and I don't know based on the model, but it looks like maybe there's some little slivers you could get through the mantlet right there. The roof is fairly thin at 50, and that's actually interesting that it's not, hold on, let me go to live. There we go. That's better. So the roof is ricochet. All right, so that's nice. That's kind of what I figured I would be seeing. But this is really what we're concerned with here. So the lower hole is just butter. I mean, it is butter in every direction. I guess there's 260 effective there, but bizarrely as it wraps up, now angled, obviously you get into auto bounce angles and stuff, but holy macaroni. I get auto-penned by everybody just chucking a shell at the lower hole. You know, and it's not auto-pen. Occasionally it bounces. This is really what this tank is about right here. Let's go over to the Vipera, though. Oh, hi. Oh, hello. Now, that's an assault TD. Okay? That's an assault TD. That's the premium. Do I really need to say any more? I don't think I need to say any more. It's just, it falls down on its face right here. If you can protect the lower hole, let's pretend for a moment the Vipera does not exist. Let's just pretend that for a moment. And you can protect this thing's lower hole, it can do some decent work. It can do some decent work. But once you're out in the open or the lower hole, and a lot of times even when you're hull down, say the rubble only comes up halfway, you can always say to yourself, self, my upper plate's pretty thick and it's angled, so that'll be fine. But no, not so much with this one. You really don't even want your upper hole being seen. So there you go. That's the armor thing. That's why I'm saying, in general, it's not great at the assault TD thing, and it doesn't have the dispersion. Over here we'll look at what my setup has with the numbers that isn't just the 100% crew that I already showed you. It doesn't really sniper, so let's jump over there. Obviously 400 alpha stays the same. I have a 22.83 second reload. That is without food but with brothers in arms in there. We have 35 each side. None of that changes. The aim time for me goes down to 2.19, which is decent. 0.36 dispersion, which is okay. Throw some food on, you're going to get another little boost on that, but you're no sniper. You're no sniper. Brings up the DPM to 1,955, a fairly modest increase there, and nothing else here really changes except for the top speed, which goes to 39 with the turbo on it. And notice I don't have a bounty or improved turbo or anything. You could throw that on and get a little bit more boost in there with some better equipment. It brings my camo up to a okay-ish 28. For a really big TD like that, that's actually fairly decent. But again, go back to the fact that you're not really sniping with this thing. It's not its wheelhouse, basically. How did I do? We will have a Tier 9 review here pretty soon. What's pretty funny about this, though, is... What's pretty funny about this is I got through this faster than I did the Tier 7. And that was largely because if you have every tank in the game, when the game gives you blueprints, they tend to be from the tanks you don't have, clearly, right? And since the only tanks you don't have are the 2 or 3 above, then you start collecting blueprints quickly. And no kidding, it only took me 40 battles. It's a bizarre thing that when you have more tanks, you get the higher tier tanks faster. Very strange. Very strange indeed. So it only took me 40, whereas it took me 50 to get to the 8. It only took me 40 to get to the 9. And, oh, by the way, I went through the modules, which we'll go through in just a moment. How did I end up? I got a 55% in 40 battles. Probably 1,487 does not support a sustained 55% win rate. I was running the lower tier guns for a while, so I did go through the grind on those things. I think my DPM or DPG is going to come up pretty well, and I might be able to hold that 55. We'll see, but as it stands, I would not. If there were 500 battles in this tank and I was running 1487 DPG at 55%, I think that would be very strange, right? Those numbers don't really go together. But I believe that that DPG will come up. Hits at 72, that's a little low. Speaks to the derpiness of the gun. 32% survived, does support kind of a 55% win rate. These numbers are okay. There's that armor use efficiency at 0.51. It was a very similar one to my tier 7, so situational, and that lower hull is a problem, plus the flat sides and the fact that it's a fairly sluggish tank. So you're not really going to get into that TS5 where you start to approach 1.0 or be in the 1.0 region on your armor use efficiency. It's going to be more at 0.5 situational armor, which is kind of tricky for something that's supposed to be a close-in fighting assault TD. It just has a lot of weaknesses on the whole. Think something like a T-34 maybe, for example, in terms of just the armor. The assist is okay at 364, and there you have it. The best game I had was 3,361 and 4 destroyed. As a matter of fact, as of me making this preliminary part of the review, I actually don't have any games to show you because I'm not really sure which one that was, and I don't think it was that great of a game anyway. I was sort of counting on having another 20 games and be able to come up with a couple good ones to show you guys, and I'll get there. I'm going to play it a little bit more and get some examples, which obviously you're going to see right after we get done yapping right here. But as of the time I'm doing this, just to let you know, is very bit of a struggle. I mean, this seems like an all or nothing tank, and it doesn't rely on the Mongo smash, occasionally impenetrable capability of the Vipera. It just doesn't have that going for it, and that makes it struggle a bit because even the Vipera struggles keeping up with the fight and getting the shots down range in certain romple stomps or when you're getting swarmed. This thing is even worse, to be quite honest. Let's take a look at the research real quick before we go into the battles that you're going to see next that I don't have right now. All right, you've got 2 turrets. You're definitely going to want to get the second turret because you're going to go from 230 up to 260. That's very important. You do not need the tracks to go through the guns. I would recommend going through the guns. What I actually did, though, is I went through this line right here to this gun, which is not in line with the unlocking of the CC-1 Mark II. It's the 120 millimeter with 3 shells with the 400 alpha and the best pen you can get at 226 and 300, but it's got the longest reload at 25 seconds. So that's what you saw in my numbers in the garage right there. Or you can go with this one, which is the reloader at 320 alpha, less pen but only 18 seconds. And I think, yeah, so this tank does not force you to take a single shot gun in any way. So these are all autoloaders through here. So I went through, got that turret, got that gun. As a matter of fact, then I got the engine so I could get a little more power, and then I got the tracks, and then I went through the rest of the guns. Frankly, you probably, if you really need to get to the 9 and you don't feel like using free experience and you don't want to really keep this tank, you can go straight through these guns, quite honestly, and get right to the CC-1 Mark II, if that's what you wanted to do. If you're going to unlock all of it or play the whole thing, I would recommend getting this gun right here, then your engine, then your tracks, and go through the top guns to move your way on to the CC Mark I. Let's go take a look at some battles that I don't quite have right now, but you're going to see next. All right, I think this one is probably going to illustrate it pretty well. I'm only going to do one replay on this one. I did a stream. I'm obviously in a platoon with Grinny from Grindler Gaming, who, by the way, appears to be back into the game, or at least she's playing a little bit. We'll see if it remains to be seen when she starts, when and if she starts doing the streaming thing again, so watch for that. But anyways, good to have her back, friend of the channel, and I only did one. All right, let's just get going with this. I think this one illustrates pretty well the issues with this tank. So I'm going to do a little Camp-a-Lama Ding-Dang early on here. Gurney's talking about going up there and maybe get me some lights. So we'll come up here and we'll do the old TV thing. Not my favorite thing to do. Generally, I try to go forward, but I will tell you that I've had some bad luck going. Okay, not fully zoom because I'm not really lead fire, but it goes way to the left on that shot. Still, though, not the best aim in that I could have had. We do bounce that, so that's nice. All right, so the armor does hold up on occasion. I'm probably assuming it hit it in the... Unfortunately, I have this armor that has all these fake holes in it. So the ones with circles around it are the known holes. That's pretty funny, actually. I never noticed that. That's pretty cool. So they put circles around it so they know where the last hits were. And no, not even close. Not even close. Again, not fully zoomed. So obviously to make the best chance for you to hit something, you want to get fully zoomed. But you don't always have that opportunity, right? That LHMTV was backing up behind the rock, and I needed to take that shot and try to get the hit, and just nothing. Didn't happen. So Grinny's raging around in the ELC. We'll go ahead and move forward here. Trying to play it more so in a TD mode. I think actually one of these hits, that one didn't obviously because it hit behind him. I back up immediately because I don't know if I'm going to get lit. So I tried a lot of trying to get forward with this tank. I think that one may have actually hit. Yeah, so he's taking a hit. I don't know if that was me or somebody else. Then he dies. Very nice. And Grinny's ELC even 90 makes the snapshot no problem. See if we can get some more shots here. On a reload. You'll notice that I'm hitting the reload pretty often. I would like to have all 3 shells here if I could get it. Having a big problem over on the right side. And this is the trade-off with sitting here and camping. While I am getting shots, they're not great shots. I'm shooting at light tanks and other crap raging around. I'm taking long-range shots with a derpy-ish gun. So none of that is really maximizing this tank. That's one of the reasons I wanted to show it to you. You know, you get the TD players who heard her, I'm a TD player, and they'll sit in a place like this no matter what. A lot, see, that was almost all the way zoomed in, not quite. I should have waited just another potato. Although look how big the dispersion circle is there. Yeah, that was finally a fully zoomed shot, goes right into the dirt. But you know, you've got just a sliver of what you're trying to hit right there. And now I'm back onto a full reload. I think I just forced a reload. I wish I hadn't done that right there. Sometimes you can out clever yourself by hitting C, and with only 3 shells. We're just going to try to hit this dude. Let's see. Okay, there he goes. I think I finally get a hit on this one. Fully zoomed, and excellent. There we go. We finally get a shot in there. Take out the WT. I'm sensing things are not going great right now. One of the reasons things aren't going really great is as far back and campy stupid as I am. Alright, this is pretty typical though. You see the side losing over here on the east side, and guys will bail out early, vice late, because if they get caught out in the open over here, they're kind of screwed. So here they all are up there. So frankly, I'm not that bothered by what's going on there. We'll take a shot. No, that goes into the dirt. One shell, see if we can get a shot on somebody. Nope, screen not penetrated. Pretty strong turret, not very surprising. I keep getting worried I might get spotted from the left side here, somebody coming up the middle. And now I start to see what's going on over here, and I feel like there's enough guys camping up there that they should be able to hold them back. Should. So let's go over this way. The problem with staying where I am is I could start to get sandwiched. It's only a Barask over here and an Emil too, and the Barask is probably not going to hang out too long trying to face punch people. So it's just the Emil 2. I'll come over this way. I'd love to use this bush right here, but I'm also worried about being shot in the back. Notice that they all have draw distance on me over here, and depending on how high they are up altitude-wise on the terrain. Also, if somebody comes up the middle and just spots me, I'm kind of screwed. Not great pen on this thing as we discussed, but I sneak one into the lower plate. So we're sitting at... Actually, that's not true. I was just thinking of the 7. Never mind. So we've got 300 pens, so pretty dang good pen, actually. Let me change that. Okay, fully zoom. Let's do it. There we go. There we go, and we get a nice high roll at 429. So we get a couple hits out of that one. We get one on the Malshin at 395. We get one on the AE Phase 1. But you can't count on that, though, right? Those were pretty big dispersion circles. Fairly small targets if you consider I got into the lower plate on the Malshin and it was angled a little bit. And I was going after the lower plate on the AE Phase 1. Those are just not really easy targets. So pretty lucky, actually, on both of those. So I'll come off of that higher altitude over to the right. We'll come over this way. We got the Malshin pushing in. That's a bunch of turret looking for a weak spot. Can't really find it. So we're just hoping that they get a little aggressive. And then I see the Cobra behind me. I get spotted. That is unfortunate. And that's my fault for backing up and sticking my rear end out and letting someone see me. We're going to try to come up here and take a shot on the Cobra. Unfortunately, I also exposed myself here. Oh, there we go. We got a KPZ coming in. Let's shoot him. There we go. All right, that worked out. And then I get shot in the side, and I should have known that was going to happen. So we'll back out of there. I don't have a whole lot of hit points to give. We're sitting at tier 8 with only 1,300. Now we'll try to zoom in nicely on this. Okay, it worked that time. Fantastic. Char takes off the rest of his hit points. Try to use the terrain here, but I don't have the gun depression to quite come up and over there. And now the Emil's getting pushed. Down goes the Barask, and really I'm just trying to hold them off from two sides right here. It's the Cobra and the KPZ up underneath. I'm just going to have to rely on the guys camping back there. Are they camping or did they reposition? I don't know. It's more of a reposition. So now the gun's going to troll me pretty hard here. I don't quite get there to see him. We're not going to shoot him. Just in case the Malshin comes around the corner. Look, he seems to still be further back. The Emil has not been in a position to see those guys, so really the Malshin could be just about anywhere. I was really hoping the ISU would come up and over. But he's apparently aware of me or doesn't want to challenge the Emil with the Emil's gun depression, so probably a smart move on his part. Come over here and see if we can see somebody. No. And unfortunately, my team, I think, gets a little over-aggressive here. They all kind of come off other than the Shrek, and I think they feel like they own these guys and they're going to be able to clean them up, but it goes extremely poorly for them over there. I think they're being backed up by the Barask anyway. So pretty quickly you're going to see that situation go from bad to worse. I might have had a shot on the ISU. I wasn't looking at that close enough. So we'll back out and try to cover the lower hole. Not quite doing it. If you notice what I'm seeing when I zoomed in, there's a lot of opening right here between my gun line and the ground. So I'm just not really hiding my lower hole right there very well. These guys push in. Oh, that's a bummer. Thankfully, I get a bounce, so I'm up to 980 bounce. And look what happened behind me. They all got wiped out, unfortunately. Trying to get a shot on this guy. Oh, there's that big dispersion, right? Not fully zoomed in. It's just one of those things you have to deal with when you got a gun like this. We'll let it zoom in a little better this time. We get the shot on him for 428 for a nice high roll on him. But I'm on a reload. And this is kind of what I was talking about, the difference between this thing and the Vipera. Think about the Vipera here. He's got 2 more shells and he's now going to punish these guys. And yes, the reload's longer, but he'd have done more, you know, I mean, he would have shaved off a bunch more hit points. Oh, this is pretty awesome. The Malshin is going to get a shot on the run here. I really overexposed myself. I was trying to get that shot on the AE because I know he's softer, but notice I came forward more, and he just fires right into that lower hole, and everything on that lower hole is weak, as we saw right there. So unfortunate for me that he actually hit me on the run, but it's a fairly accurate gun, and it's a big old giant lower hole right there. So I exposed it. He shot it. There you go. I don't even know if I get any more shots because I've got to try to reload while they're coming in on me. And I feel like the Cobra's going to show up behind me. Probably the Barask. There's the Cobra, so he's taking on the Char. That was lucky. I'm glad he missed. Still not reloaded. I get a bounce from the Barask. That's helpful. I'm really hoping the Char wins, because if the Char wins, maybe we have a chance. All right, there we go. The Char wins. But I'm about to get absolutely shredded right here. Now watch this shot. This is one of those things that happens with derpy guns. Oh, here he comes. Fire. Oh, no, nothing. I really needed that, right? I really needed that. Brings him down to a one-shot for me, but now he's a two-shot. So we'll go ahead and shoot him once as he comes in. We'll hope that he doesn't, but he does. Pretty easy pen for an ISU 152 at that range into my hole and just takes me down. So we get 3,148, a little bit off my best game in this thing. We bounced some when we were in the right position and they were hitting the turret. We did get bounces. Notice when I exposed my hole, while some of those are lucky while they're moving, hey, you know what? You exposed it, they aimed at it, they hit it. So there you go. Try not to expose weak position or weak spots in the tank, and that whole lower hole is just a weak spot. You saw the derpiness of the gun. You really want to let that zoom all the way in. That's true of every gun in the game, but especially for the derpier ones like this, sitting at 0.35, 0.34. You're trying to take long-range shots at things that are moving. So it is a tank that wants... Well, let's wrap it up. Hold on. We'll go back. Let's go back to the garage, and we'll wrap this up. All right, what I was trying to get to right there is the difference between it and the Vipera. You can see win rate wise, at least right now, so early days, but it's just below and quite a bit above a lot of the other premium TDs that are really pretty good. You look at DPG, Vipera is a bit higher. It's the first non-premium, so the first tech tree, again, early days. Frags, it's down a little bit further. Damage ratio, not doing as well because it's got more hit points. Damage ratio is kind of tricky depending on if you've got wide hit point variations in the class or the tanks you're talking about. And pretty far down on kill to death. But win rate wise in DPG, it's not nearly as bad as how I was thinking about the tank. So if I'd have never looked at the facts, I would have told you it's not doing very good because I wasn't wholly impressed with the tank. That being said, the Vipera is just straight up a better tier 8 in the role that these two things are supposedly supposed to be in. The extra 2 shots in there just really gives it a lot more capability and the better armor overall, and the better armor layout really at the end of the day. So those two things just make the Vipera straight up a better tank. This one is not bad though. It's doing pretty well stats wise. We'll have to see where it comes out in the wash in a year or two, who knows. Some people are obviously doing well in it. My penchant, or the way I played the tanks a lot in this game, not really being as careful with aiming as I probably should be, is probably hurting my bottom line with the SMV CC-67. It really requires you to be careful with the shots, particularly since you've only got 3 in the auto-loading system anyway. You got to make them count because that 400 is a fairly decent punch you're giving people, but if you miss 2 out of 3, you're really hurting. And 2 out of 3 is probably not even as good as you need it. I mean, you really need to make every shot count in this tank. Maybe to some extent think of a T-77 where you really need to get the shots in there. And it's just a little bit tricky at times, especially if you're trying to play that assault TD role and you've got that really soft lower hole and the turret's just not quite as good as it would seem. So I know there's some backhanded compliments in there. It was not my favorite TD. I like that role, actually. I do enjoy the assault TDs. It does have some significant flexibility by having the turret, but every time I think of this tank, I think of the Vipera because it exists, and it's just straight up better than this thing in just about every way, and probably in every way that matters, really, in winning World of Tanks games at tier 8 anyway. So there you go. I would say this is average to slightly below average, but its current performance is a slightly above average to maybe above average. So let me know what you think down below. Only time will tell in a year. Maybe I'll come back to this at some point and look at it and see if I was right. But I feel like it will probably be near the top, should be near the top of the tech tree tanks for tier 8 TDs. But I don't think it's going to be too far above most of the other good premium TDs. Is that as vague as possible? I think it is. Let me know what you think down below of the SMV CC-67 tier 8 Italian tech tree TD. That's all I've got. Thanks for supporting the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're looking for other ways to support the efforts for making content for World of Tanks, you'll find that down in the description. That is all I've got. We will see you.